So I don't think I've ever really gone through Insey's whole backstory. Being a homebred, we actually know her full life story, and here she is as a foal. Very cute. And there's Jerry, who bred her out, and there's her mother. So I've been lucky enough to be involved with her since she was a 2-year-old. So I miss these very, very cute days of where she was a very sweet little foal. But here she is as a 2-year-old, and pretty much very similar personality, cheeky, a little bit water-phobic. And that big grey one is her sister, who was 2 years older than her, and she was pretty grumpy, and that pretty much defines her personality as well, from what you've just seen about how she treats her sister. So yes, she's a funny little thing here, isn't she? And her sister would have been 4 in that image, and I'd backed her. And then Insey was a 2-year-old, and quite a little bit growing to do. It's funny looking back at these videos. And here she is on her first day of being backed with a saddle on. And then she spent an awful lot of 4, 5, and 6 being bum high, and there you can see how bum high she would go. So every time she went bum high, I would stop the work and just give her a break, because luckily I had other horses and things, and it worked very well for me. Also, I really don't like working horses that have gone bum high, because I find it jams the shoulders, puts all the weight on the forehand, and they end up really resentful and a bit hurt and sore. So they just stop. Here she would be as a 3-year-old, loose jumping. As you can see, loads of ability and talent, and actually seems to quite enjoy jumping, which is always good. This would be as a 3-year-old, being newly backed. So there you go. You can see how weak she is. She would have only done 6 weeks. Backing them as 3, I tend to do 6 weeks of work. They do walk and trot in the arena, mostly to check they're safe before they go out and leave. They do ridden work, and they always go out in pairs or groups with an older horse who knows what they're doing, and that's pretty much all they need to do. So they just hack and get backed and do a few circles. So here you go, long rein, just forwards is all I care about when they're this age, and that's her pretty much done. So I think this is her at 4, so you can see she's a little bit less bum high, but then she'd change. And this would be her jumping. So again, as a 4-year-old, you can see how weak she is. She's got no canter. My job's to try and keep her straight, and so it's not the best, but this is all she'd done. She did one competition, which was a walk and trot, where she scored a terrible 52%, mostly because she walked in the wrong places and trotted in the wrong places, but I stayed on. She behaved herself, and it was a useful outing. I really like walk and trot tests for doing that. This would be a riding club lesson. So this was the only other thing she did as a 4-year-old. This was in December of that year. And, it wasn't 100% perfect, but, it's a useful outing. They've got to learn. And this would probably be her first time in an indoor as well. So, all in all, you're just really pleased that they're getting out, having a nice time, and that they've made progress. And it's quite nice when they're this age, because they make progress really quickly, which I kind of enjoy. So as you can see, none of it's very big. She can't really canter into jumps. She can just about canter afterwards, but it's very weak. And so that was all she did as a 4-year-old. And then we've got her coming to a 5-year-old. She really didn't do very much as a 5-year-old either. So as a 5-year-old, she was did nothing for the first half of the year, because she'd gone bum high again. And then she went to camp. It was a show jumping camp run at Chard, and it was supposed to be her sister who was supposed to be going, but sister injured herself in the stable, so Insey got drummed in. So Insey's doing her first proper grids, and I don't think she'd ever jumped this big before, because she'd done little tiny jumps like you saw as a 4-year-old, because I'm not very brave about stuff like this. But you can see how incredible she was, and what a cool little horse. Funny little shape here, and she's always been a bit of a monkey and cheeky. So this was lessoned on the second day. So she'd done the day before, where she could just about trot into fences, and so she'd made rapid progress just in the 2 days. And we're very lucky. The trainer set up a grid just to help her specifically, and really did help her. Wasn't very good at staying straight. And I apologise about the saddle. She kept changing shape a lot, and we just got booked in for a new saddle, and it hadn't quite turned up, so this is what we just had at the time, and it doesn't fit her terribly well, because she'd changed shape so much. But yeah, overall, you go to these kinds of camps, see such progress, and then you get quite excited about the horse. I don't think I did any competing after this. Didn't do very much after camp. She would have just been sort of like pretty much had a break. So this is on day 2. This would have been her sort of first fillers and a bit of a course, and you can see she's not quite as so cheery as she was in the first lesson because she's probably very tired by this point. This is her first ever stay away as well. And yeah, she's just on the edge of tired. I think all I did was this one round and she'd gone so well that I just put her away. So she probably did about 15 minutes in that second lesson because you don't want to, you can see she's a bit grumpy anyway. But yeah, she would have been absolutely exhausted because she'd never have done anything quite like this. But yeah, one round just to finish on a good note and then she would have gone home and had a break. So all in all, a great weekend and real progress made. So then we have her coming into a 6-year-old year in a second. So as a 6-year-old, this is her first ever one-day event, 80 centimetres. You can see what a different shaped horse she is, starting to look like the horse she probably is now. And, all in all, looks very smart. You can see how fragile the canter is. We didn't really have much canter, and she is still very, very fragile in the contact. She's always a horse that needs to be forwards in order for you to have any contact because of the hind leg conformation. But so it's taken a long time to get her true into the contact. And I used to ride her with a very light contact, but it wasn't ever a true contact. And then she's always been a horse that would move her head and shake it and stuff just because of the balance. So you'll see it in a minute where she would, with the contacts and things, she's just, she finds balance quite hard. She's always had tons of ability, but she's always she used to throw her head around quite a lot. And even though she's just in a snaffle and had been bitted up, by a professional, it was just a lot about her balance, which, as you can see, is not terribly good. It's just taken her a very, very long time to strengthen and mature. And with horses like this, no point in rushing it. You just let them have their own time. And luckily, I had a couple of other horses, so you don't have a worry if you're turning them away for a couple of weeks. You're not just sat twiddling your thumbs. So here she is. This would have been her first ever competitive show jumping round. But she's never really been... She's a funny horse because she's not really spooky about fillers and things, so I never really worried about that sort of thing. And she's got a very good back end, which has meant, again, the other thing I've had to wait for is that because she's so good behind, she sometimes digs herself into the front end when she's over a jump because she's a bit too active in the back end. And so I've always been a bit careful about cross-country with her on bad ground. And you can see in a second how much she looks like she's really enjoying the cross-country, which is good. So this is her first ever cross-country round. Pontypool's got a water jump that's next to the show jumping, so if you work it out quite nicely, you can actually just pop them through the water, especially if they're a bit water phobic like she is. And I tried to do that day. She decided she didn't want to go through the water, so I had to get off in my hacking jacket and my De Niro boots and lead her through. Jancis thought that was absolutely hilarious. Jancis certainly wasn't going to run down and give me a hand, so I had to do it myself. So I got fairly wet feet that day, but it worked because she went straight through the water this time. And she's always been kind of the same. Once her feet have got wet, she's fine with water, but often she's very suspicious that first time. In a second, you'll see her do a beautiful spook, which nearly drops me over the shoulder. There we go. Managed to stay on, luckily. Young horses, eh? Always testing you. And my main thing cross-country is I just want them to be forwards and learn to be forwards. I don't rush them in between fences because they just need to find their own stride and find their own balance. But when you get close to the fence, I just want them in front of the leg and taking me. And that's all I look for. With them this age, you can't get too fussy about trying to get the canter good into the fence, half halting or doing anything like that, or even taking a pull, because you've got nothing. You can't adjust the canter. So you just have got what you got. So you sit up and just keep riding. You go. So funny little thing, isn't she? But yeah, we're not going very fast. I think that was the fastest we were going to be able to go. And there she is. That's her first photo. So this is Mendip Plains. I think I'd up her to 90 centimetres because she's got plenty of ability. And this is the dressage. It looks very nice, but actually it's very fake. She doesn't actually have a true contact, and so if she gets unbalanced or wobbly, then actually she throws her head around. So it looks better than it is, and you kind of get some of the marks and then get distracted on others. So here she is in the show jumping. The canter's beginning to look a bit better. She's got a little bit more balance, and yeah, she's a lovely jumper. She always has been. So I think this is another event that Jancis came with me to support and help, because when they're this age, they don't spend very much. They don't really like staying on a trailer because they've got to learn to do that. So in order to be safe and sorry, I always try and take someone with me. And I remember her sister, as a 5-year-old, went eventing for the first time, managed to have a horse fall at the first fence show jumping. So that wasn't so good. But luckily, Insey is a lot more about her and has a bit more brains than her sister ever did. There you go. So because Insey's always been a bit of a monkey about bucking and being silly before a jump, she's often got herself into trouble. And because of that, actually, she's always been super helpful. And very good and athletic at getting herself out of trouble. So that is quite one very useful thing. Whereas her sister never really had that, was a bit more careful. So you can see she's a lovely girl, isn't she, here? Slowly picking up experience and making 90 centimetres look ridiculously easy. Oh, so we have the last fence. So cross country, I'd made a terrible mistake going here. I shouldn't have run cross country. I should have left it after the show jumping, and now I know better. The ground was really, really deep in places. We'd had a lot of rain, and it was a very, very technical cross country. Too technical for the level, actually. And when I walked it, I should have made the decision to pull up or whatever sooner than I did. You can see, compared to Pontypool, she's not quite as forward. She's looking around a bit more, and she doesn't look quite as confident. So it was not the greatest of round. Here she is. She doesn't look half as confident because there's a lot more going on, and that was the third fence. To be up and down a mound on a very green 6-year-old isn't very helpful. It gets a little bit better, but you'll see in a minute we have a problem at the water where she picks up a 20. And I'm having to ride her a little harder than I was keep her in front of the leg a little bit more than I was at Pontypool, whereas naturally she was much more onward bound and looked like she was enjoying the job a bit more. So here's the water. Oh, goodness. It's quite a very open water, but she's having a very good look. And she does eventually go, but I don't... The thing is, at this age, again, at 6, she's very green, so I don't want to pressurise them, and they have to learn to go from their own accord. And she does go very slowly, and then spends a lot of time thinking about the water, that she doesn't really sort of come out of it very well. But very useful for people to see, I think, because it hasn't all been smooth running. And there you go, she's very green and looking at this, and so just try and stay out of her way and keep her forwards. And then she holds on to that fence at this next one where I sort of have to ride her forwards, and it's very soon after we pretty much retired because she just couldn't understand the fence. It was like a skinny log on a mound. She just couldn't understand it, and the going was really deep, so just pulled up and came home. And so it wasn't our day, and you can't worry about it. You just go home and cross-country school a bit more. But yeah, you can see she's not quite the same as she was at Pontypool. So this is back to Pontypool again. You can see she's kind of thinks she knows it, a little bit cockier, and not quite so good in the dressage. I think we scored a 35 this day. Again, you look at this and think, oh, it looks pretty good, but when it goes wrong with the head and the contact, like here, then we absolutely get hemorrhage marks because actually she's really not truly into the contact, and so the head and contact moves. And a lot, again, there's balance, as you'll notice, upwards and downwards transitions, anything with a slight change of direction, like there. And the show jumping, I don't know, she was on one today, on this very day, and was absolutely full of it. On a horse that's a very good show jumper. She was just a bit backwards, and we managed to have 3 fences down. Very fussy in the contact this day as well. So the canter in some ways looks stronger, but I think where I expected a little bit more, she was then not quite so good through her frame. Oh, and that was just, she's got to learn to go forwards, and she was not coming off the turn. So you ride forwards for it and take and they've got to learn from that. But you can see the head for this one, even though she's older and would have done a bit more before it, the head's just going. She's just not quite as balanced, and the stride's a lot longer, so it doesn't look quite as good, even though when the other one she didn't have such a good canter. She's got a better canter here, but it's all about the balance of her. And then you need to sort of kind of ride forwards because she's got to stay forwards in front of you, and it's just one of those. Again, not a brilliant result, but we survived. And then we're making this distance look incredibly short when it was actually a regular distance. So from before, the canter was too short, now the canter's too long. So again, it's just that time and she has improved the jumping as she went on. So that's one thing. And then cross country, she looks a bit happier than she did at Mendip Plains, but Pontiple's a lovely cross country. It's just like really nice for them to get going on because it's quite just everything's spread out a bit better, and it's more, the technicality tends to accumulate fairly. So there she is, looking a lot better cross country than she did at Mendip Plains. And then she actually went round pretty well. So I was quite pleased with this because it made up for this terrible show jumping, which I was really annoyed about. So this was at 90 centimetres, and she's finding it really easy. And then I've got a bit of a Mark Phillips lesson that we had when she was 6. I think this was sort of like July, and so I'll let you listen to that.
Keep going, keep going. Lucy, give yourself a bit more chance. Turn right, turn right, turn right. We're getting better, yeah? Yeah. But see, I wouldn't have minded if you'd had another stride that time. Not another stride by this way, but another stride this way. With more balance. Yeah? Go around the back of that barrel. That's it. Good. Thank you. Off you go. That's so nearly so good, yeah? So nearly so good, yeah? What am I missing, yeah? I'm missing that much in terms of balance, yeah? Because you finish up jumping a little bit this way, you tip it just there, so you go this way, and instead of this way. So if you one more time, I don't care. Looking at the lights up there, cannot have his head hang when it can. Our language, how you can't. The higher his head, the better you down to it. It's the better his balance is going to be. Up, up, up. Thank you. That is the best thing I've seen you do today. Because when you're up at A, I was a bit nervous because I was missing that 6 inches of balance. But when you turn the B, walking here, ding, 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 ping, ding, 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 perfect, yeah.
So all this season, she was, as a 6-year-old, she was a bit backwards and she kept picking up a lot of 20s and cross country, always at a different fence, never the same thing. So I took her and did quite a lot of fun rides. I also took her on hunting clinics. They're a brilliant way of 2 hours of cross country, following other horses, jumping hedges to get them going forwards. And that actually made the world of difference to her. And she actually learned that getting from A to B was fun and to not be messing about quite so much and to work out what she was doing ahead. Earlier in the year, I'd done combined training BD at Chard and to qualify for the championships. So this is us at the championships. I'd had to work quite hard on her dressage. It was still quite fragile, but that day, in the dark, at only, she absolutely pulled it out the bag and got like a 68% score, which was amazing for where she was at the time on a horse that could barely canter. And then jumped clear around 90 centimetres show jumping around quite a technical track. And we ended up coming third, which was unbelievable because I think we went to the championships just to give her some experience and just have a bit of fun because we're qualified. And never in our wildest dreams would we have expected to come third and have a mounted prize giving. So overall, that was pretty amazing. So this is her as a 7-year-old. I organise camps, or I used to, and this is her at the beginning of the year being an absolute idiot. She came out that day, was over fresh, over horrible, and I'd asked my friend to ride her because I had taken 2 horses there, her sister and herself, and she deposited my friend on the floor within 30 seconds. She was being like that. Now I look back at this and you can I had a lesson with Marie Ryan, which you'll see in a second, doing the cross-country stuff. And Marie said she's a mare. I've noticed with mares, they seem to get higher rates of ulcers. Have you considered that she's got ulcers? I said, she's always been a bit of a monkey, and she's always been a bit like this when she's fresh. And Marie's like, I just think with the way she's acting, it would be really worth getting her scoped. And you can see she's just a little bit full of it and bucky and very, very bucky. And she didn't have any other signs. You know, she was fine home. She's always been fed a high fibre diet. She's always never been girthy. She loves being groomed and things like that. But Marie's just said, look, it's just my experience. I've never seen the horse before, but I would get her scoped. So we went home from this camp, got her scoped, and she had some pretty serious ulcers. So she then spent a month not doing very much on a mesoporal treatment to get the ulcers sorted, and it made all the difference. So you can see she's still like not. When you look back at this with hindsight, it's all very easy to say, isn't it? But you can see she's just not the happy, jolly person that she was when you saw her earlier in some of her lessons and stuff. She's a bit. She looks cross, and yes, she's performing, and she's doing exactly what she needs to do without any hassle whatsoever. She certainly didn't have a lost performance. The only thing was about this was bucking, really. And I said, now you look back and you think, gosh, if only I'd known, but at least we did something about it quite promptly, and it really made an ultimate difference to her. No idea how long they've been going on for. She's always been a funny horse for her immunity and her body and her sensitivity, so it doesn't surprise me that she did get them, but they're sorted now, thank goodness. So this would have been cross-country schooling. I think this would be about April, first time out that year. She was cheeky, but apart from that, where it's quite a big fence and we'd both gone for it, but you can see her facial expressions are a lot happier. This is June, and this has been the riding club qualifiers. Now, this is her sister, Ellie. The reason Ellie's being pictured here is because Ellie went and did the riding club qualifier that day, but I'd been diagnosed with cancer probably about a month before, but wanted to carry on eventing. I was very due to start chemo after this, so I wanted to go and do it. And it was my aim to get to the Riding Club Championships on Ellie and just carry on as normal as much as I could, even with a very, very heavy chemotherapy program in place. So I'd lost, I don't know what it was, while I was diagnosed, I didn't have the results back and I'd lost a lot of confidence. I think I was holding it together in my life, carried on working as normal, and with people I was absolutely fine and stuff, but I think a lot of my confidence issues around the diagnosis came out when I was riding. So I had a lesson with Cameron Beer actually on Ellie, and it was just going so badly, and I burst into tears, and I was like, oh, I can't do this. And anyway, it all got better from that point on, but for some reason on this horse, I think I just ended up overthinking and overriding, and that's how all my sort of like trauma about what had happened came out on. As you can see, she was an amazing horse, Ellie, and was actually owned by me, bred by Jerry. She was 2 years older than Insey, and I'd won my first ever B on her the year before. She was one of those horses that managed to like do stupid self-harming things that would end her eventing season. So one year she fell in a ditch and had to have stitches around her girth area. Another year, lightning had come on and she freaked out and fallen over in the stable and had to have stitches above her eye and stuff like that. She was just one of those. Got kicks in the field on her hock. So she never really done her true potential with me. But this day, we came second, so we managed to qualify for the Riding Club Championships individually and as a team. So that was pretty cool. But the reason I'm telling you that is because that ends Ellie's story. Because as chemo went on, I had no strength. I'd lost so much strength. And she was a very big, strong horse. So I made the decision to sell her, which means that Insey, as a 7-year-old, got drummed in to take over. So we kept Insey because Insey isn't actually strong. She's pained sometimes because she's like has strong opinions, but she's very, very helpful jumping. She doesn't pull, and she's an easier horse all round to manage than Ellie ever was. So we kept Insey for that reason. So here she is at Broadway doing her first ever 100. I had to, in order to be able to go to the Riding Club Championships, which I decided I was absolutely determined to do, I had to do 2 100s. So this is her first ever 100. She'd not evented before this season because obviously I got diagnosed. I had Ellie in work and carried on eventing her. And so Insey was kind of put on the back burner. I think I was well into chemotherapy at this point on the really serious stuff where you have to go in and spend the whole day in a chair, and mostly survived off Lucozade and salt and vinegar crisps. I felt in the heat, just felt awful, but I was so determined to carry on and be able to event. Our dressage test was awful, but we got a stupid score, like 24. Jumping wise, she was super jumping around her first 100. I don't know what it is about Insey. I've just always had a lot of confidence jumping her. I think it's because she's really helpful and she will dig you out of trouble. If you pop her into trouble, she will dig you out as long as you're not asking something insane like 130. So as long as you get her there, stay out of her way, and she will try for you. Sometimes she'll have an annoying pole, but on the whole, she tries really hard. So here you go, going around her first 100. I was absolutely thrilled with the way she'd gone. I hadn't ridden that well because you can see I'm just like managing it all a bit too much rather than just flowing around. But I don't know what's going on with my elbows. You can see she's trying really hard, trying really careful, and taking her poor rider around. What a little star. And you see, this is why she was kept. Her sister did eventually go 3-star with a very, very good young rider. So that was pretty good. And also won her first international. It's kind of mixed emotions that day because I was like, that was my horse to do that on, and that was always my dream. But, sometimes, life gets in the way. And then the second, we'll see her going cross country. So at the end of her 6-year-old year, I'd spent quite a lot of time sort of doing fun rides and hunt rides where clinics. I'd also taken her autumn hunting with different packs to try and get her going, and the result is a much better horse cross country. Just much more forwards, much more able to figure it out, and overall a much more confident horse that suddenly thought, I now see the point. And as you can see, she's got much more of a game face about her rather than messing about going around cross country and spooking at everything and looking at everything that's going on. So yeah, was really thrilled for this day because we actually picked up the win, which I just went out for a qualification and never ever expected to pick up a first rosette. So that was pretty exciting, especially as I would have spent most of the week being very ill. At this point, I was on 2-week cycles of chemo, so I'd spend 1 week feeling absolutely horrendous, pretty much recover by the Tuesday, Wednesday, back on a horse, and then would go competing that weekend. And then I'd have another 4 days of being well before I'd go back to chemo and then be sick again. So, it was just a cycle, one of those things, just keep getting up and getting going. But horses absolutely kept me going through it all and gave me a real aim. I was determined. I set myself so many goals, and the Riding Club Championships for me was that absolutely big goal. What a good girl. So there she is, around her first ever 100, and she went superb. And to pick up a good rosette. So coming up, we've got her second ever 100. This was my final qualifier. I had an absolute disaster in the morning. I'd learnt the wrong dressage test. I was very sick on chemo, so had literally no energy whatsoever. But here she is going around. This is the equestrian going around from Oxtals, again around the 100. I think we had one pole down show jumping. The dressage judge was proper grumpy with me because I'd forgotten the test, and I literally had about 5 minutes to learn it, and it was a complicated one, and my brain was foggy. So I managed to read it back to the dressage. I got the dressage judge to tell me what the dressage test was, and I sort of apologised to him. So he grumpily told me what it was, and I wrote my test. Got a terrible score. I think I think I was like 37, but at that point I didn't care. I just needed the qualification, and then she absolutely bombed around the cross country, as you can see, like really looking really super, and making it look really easy. So we got our qualification for the Riding Club Championships, which was just absolutely brilliant. The year before, I'd gone to Oxtals, and she'd had a 20 at the water. So I think at this point, took her cross-country schooling 48 hours before she'd go eventing, mainly to do water and ditches. So every time I wanted to go eventing, she'd go cross-country schooling 48 hours before to different venues, and the result was that she was a lot better at water because of that. Even now, as a 9-10-year-old, she will carry on doing exactly that because it makes her a very different, bolder horse with the water and ditches and things like that. I don't do very much. I'll only probably do half an hour, but it's just always a check. And I was talking to Nick Gauntlet last week, and he said even the horse he went to Badminton as an intermediate horse would go cross-country schooling 48 hours before. It just makes for her a real difference and makes her really confident. So here we are. We made it to the Riding Club Championships. I'd lost most of my hair. It had been cut off really short, and just absolutely thrilled to be there. I think we'd got a 32 in the dressage, and I had loads of friends there to help me. I really couldn't have done it without them because I was not that fit, really. And cross country, I'd gone schooling 48 hours before. I would done all my homework. She'd gone so well up to her, and I was very, very worried about the first water because it was kind of her nightmare. But as you can see, she set off like an absolute rocket on the cross country. What a different looking horse to how she had been around some others. And she was giving me the ride of my life at this point. I was weak, but still piloting, and I had been so determined to get there, and it really had kept me going through my treatment that I was going to go and do this. So every week I had a different aim, whether it was qualifying, riding, fitness, etc., etc. And this had been my absolute aim to get this horse there, even though it was supposed to be her sister. I sometimes think in adversity it brings out the best of you, and this was it. So we're coming up to the water, which I was so worried about. I think I walked it 2 or 3 times, watched loads of horses, but she comes around this water and is an absolute superstar. So for me, there you go. There's Mandy, who you've often seen in the videos. Absolutely chuffed with her. All that hard work that I'd put in had paid off, and she was just immense because water had caused an awful lot of problems. Sadly, our dream ended very shortly afterwards because I fell off at the coffin. She jumped beautifully. It wasn't even her fault. She didn't jink or anything. It's just I just lost all my energy at that point and literally flopped off, which was pretty devastating for it to end that way. But up to that point, I was just so happy to have made it and so happy that she'd gone so well. And it was never her fault. So here we are in a lesson with Cameron Beer. So this is her as a 7-year-old. And again, still in the middle of chemotherapy. But, riding's what I loved. And producing horses is what I love. So, I was just going to make sure I absolutely carried on. So one of the things I gave up pretty much eventing after the Riding Club Championships and switched to dressage. So Team Quest was an amazing opportunity, and we managed to win our qualifiers and then went to the finals. We didn't do very well at the finals because we had an awful lot to learn, but we got there. And then this is the end of the year, so I'm still on chemo. I think I'd come to the end of chemo at this point, but it probably sums her up quite nicely as a 7-year-old about her little cheeky nature and different times of the year, how she comes out. For some reason, she's always a lot more feral at home and behaves herself better out and out. And she's always been a pretty good performer at a championship, so it kind of leaves me optimistic for that she'll enjoy the crowds at badminton. But you never know of her. She'll either be first or last. There's no real in between. Well, when I say first, maybe top 20, but yeah, so, she's always been cheeky, and if she's fresh, she's even worse. There's nothing going on with her here, just a cheeky little madam who hasn't probably been worked hard enough because I was in the middle of stuff. But yeah, very nice horse, isn't she? Oh, there she is. But I'd actually been doing CrossFit at that point because obviously I kept falling off, even just schooling. I just kept falling off, and that was the result of weak muscles. So I got the doctor to sign me off and went to CrossFit, and this is the result of CrossFit. Is actually I could stick all this, and it didn't matter how cheeky she was. So that's the end of our 7-year-old year. And then this is the beginning of our 8-year-old year. This is actually all on YouTube. She was an absolute monkey this day, and shortly went on to Regumate afterwards when I rang my vet and was in despair about her behaviour. I said, she hasn't got ulcers. And he said, you're the 5th person to have called me about horses behaving like this. You can see she's just completely over the top, and it's adrenaline mixed with hormones. And she comes out at the beginning of the year, and she's just a bit the same. And actually, we learnt last year she's again goes a bit funny on hormones, so she goes on Regumate now twice a year, once for the first spring season and once for the end of the year. And I have to say, we've never gone back to Lark Hill either, because I daren't. So she will now go to Oxtalls as one of her early events. But yeah, so here we are. This is actually when we pretty much started YouTubing, so it's all on YouTube. Hopefully our videoing has got a lot better since then. And yeah, she's just over the top. And then obviously cross country, she was just horrible cross country. From the horse that you can see earlier, was an absolute rocket at the right time of year going round the Riding Club Championships. I think she'd had a long break from eventing, obviously because I couldn't do it, and thought Lark Hill was brilliant, and actually very, very happy not to be doing dressage. It wouldn't be her favourite phase. But yeah, it's just managing her. Oh, that's an annoying pole. Oh, brakes. And then cross country, I don't know what went into her this day, but she was just not with me, not taking me, not my normal horse that is a real good cross country machine. So hence ringing the vet and saying, what do I do? And we had a long discussion about it, whether we thought it was loss of performance, whether it was anything going on, and he knows the horse very, very well, and he was just like, I think it's a Regumate issue with hormones. So since we've had her on Regumate, we've never had any problems. So I think, is it this one she has to stop at? She has to stop at a really innocuous fence that she shouldn't have. No, not this one, it'll be the next one. So, and she was just spooking at the gravel on the ground, and she's just not that kind of horse. So highs and lows, as you can see, throughout her journey, and I thought I'd end with this one, which was her first ever BE event, and there you go, she said stop, and I'm going to fall off in about 30 seconds, so that was just brilliant. It was not a fun day, but everything now is, the rest of her story is on YouTube. Obviously, this year she is 10. We head to Morton, hopefully, for our first event, and then Oxtalls. And then in May, we'll head to Badminton Grassroots, which is pretty exciting. Don't think I ever really expected to get there. It's never really part of my aims. It's just one of those nice to haves. And actually, I tried a bit harder last year for it. Had quite a few disasters along the way. And that is now all on YouTube. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed. And I think it's around the next sort of fence I fall off. And that was pretty much how Lark Hill ends for us. But anyway, hopefully this season will be a bit better. Yet to go cross-country schooling. Yeah, sorry, the video is very shaky here. There we go.
For goodness sake, horse.
There we go. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this, and we will catch you soon.